Hello everybody, Anthony is here, and in this video we'll talk about the topology process of the vehicle. So yeah, took me quite a while. I did cut out some parts, but I hope you enjoyed. I give some commentary along the way. Alright, so here I have the concept started, or finished, and now we'll try to fix up the body. So I'm removing all the modifiers, keeping it a clean stack. And removing, I use like a check ID select. I removed every second vertex on that round curve. I don't need that many vertices to do a sub-D model. And now I want to combine these two parts together. So I have an auto merge in the world settings set to something like 0.001. It's a super handy thing in Blender. And you can see here I'm trying to minimize the amount of edge loops. I usually try to be as minimalistic as possible for quad modeling, sub-D modeling, because you can always subdivide it one time to increase the poly count. I'm trying to place that curve in a like in the right position. And every time I press Control, I essentially snap the vertex to another vertex, and it gets combined. And here I kind of did an offset of the curve. I'm trying to do it properly, like inset essentially. So what I ended up doing, I duplicated a curve and pushed the part back, and now I can bridge it all together. I think inset didn't work out. All right, so it looks like I almost combined it all together using the bridge. And I'm not like a Blender Pro modeler, so while I do use a lot of hotkeys, I don't know all of the hotkeys, and maybe I should set them up a bit more. But overall, modeling here was fairly easy, just time-consuming. Majority of the stuff here, majority of time I was moving vertices around. Not that much of complicated operations. But there are some operations that I really like Blender, where you can do a G-stretch, you can use the loop tools and do different type of straightening and or curvature that I like. Well, since I use Maya a lot, I cannot do that in Maya. So here I'm just trying to extrude the curved part along. So here I have to go pretty heavy poly just because I have to have a continuation from the start of the curve to the end. And I'm trying to align it, right? So I'm jumping between the views to align it properly. Right, so that's... And now I'm just looking if I can remove every second edge loop. I figured out that probably had too many anyway. So decided to fix it. You can see I'm using creasing, and I'll be using creasing to the end. I can always turn creasing to mesh if you, like, I would say, combine the stack of modifiers and turn subdivision into a model. So this particular corner was giving me some trouble. I didn't like the subdivision there, so I spent a fair amount of time trying to get a better smoothing between this kind of part of Fender and the main body. I originally tried to not to do any triangles, or at least do temporary triangles and then like fix them up later on. But eventually, I got pretty tired with this model, so what in the end I did have a few triangles here and there. I even have one angon in one spot. It doesn't affect the smoothing that much, and it's not an organic model, so it's not that big of a deal. However, I was thinking about it that if I needed to send it to, say, a CAD software, like if I wanted to turn the quads into polygon, into NURBS in a CAD software, then you want to have 100% quad model, and that was my original idea. Is like I will run, I will do everything in quad, so I can later reuse it in CAD software. But I was like, just give up at one point and started to introduce triangles and, well, triangles mostly here and there. So I can see I'm using a knife tool, but I can see that knife tool is not cutting through. It means that I have an issue with the mesh. And in this case, it looks like the mesh has been inverted. And it's a thing that, to be honest, I found with Blender, opposite, say, to Maya, that it's checking the normals is a bit trickier. If you know a good plugin or way of checking the normals like fast, you can tell me. I'm actually not aware about it. I even drop this model to Maya sometimes, few times during this process to check for issues, because in Maya it's easy to find non-manifold geometry, it's easy to find flipped normals. Sometimes you have a bunch of flipped normals which you just cannot see inside Blender by default, and with that issue I had to just check them and see them in Maya. That's one thing that I find Blender is a bit hard, is like making the models be super clean without any issues. So I'm trying to combine some parts. Now I jump to the back part, so I'm trying to resolve this back. And overall, the back and the front, it took me quite a bit longer than I thought, because I started to doing some design tweaks on the way as well. So, and if you start doing design on tweaks on actually like sub-D model, it becomes way more time consuming than if I did them on this kind of low poly version of the concept. And especially the back and the front, I did like many iterations, which I didn't really include in the video just because they're pretty tedious to watch. The video is already long enough. Just trying to get that part to look right. And combining the back fender to the side body. Trying to use the knife tool to match the edge loops. I'll be definitely leaving a lot of angles here and there that which later are fixed. So he decided to add some thickness to that part, otherwise it didn't smooth correctly. I quite like how it's smoothed out over there. So had a nice, fairly complex shape. So I'll introduce another edge loop to see how that will smooth. And now I'm jumping into EV mode to see how it looks in a different lighting, which I did a lot. So strengthen that edge with another containing edge loop. So I'm extending this thing. And I'm using the relax tool in the loop tools to, well, to relax the curve. What I found about creasing in Blender, that if the creasing is going a bit too high, then the edge looks super sharp. And you can see here I'm kind of doing design tweaks on the back fender, and like at the 4x speed it flies pretty fast. But I had a lot of ideas just by, because it was so easy when I was starting to get a sub-D model. It was easy to push these lines up and down and see how that affects the overall design. You can see there I've introduced the line and relaxed it and got a nice curvature on the back fender. So here's a bit of a jump ahead, and now I'm working on the kind of capsule body inside. You can see here the topology of this capsule is super simple. Like, there's hardly any lines, but enough to shape it. And at this stage, I decided to go and clean this all up, because I still didn't want to have the geometry that was just looking a bit crazy twisted. So I'm trying to space it out a bit more and straighten some parts and remove other parts. And the body itself, it's a bit of a jump ahead. I worked in the body quite a bit, so now the front has a bit different design. What you can see here, I just spread the edges around of the capsule. So now it looks nice and clean, and now I can add edge loops without getting too worried that I'm getting some crazy results. So I'm just using creasing as much as possible, especially at this stage. You can see I'm using a lot of scaling along the axis to straighten the edge loops. So essentially, I press S, then I press X axis and scale it down to like a 0. And I did play with the shape quite a bit of the capsule itself as well. And the proportions and the size of it. And the idea is like it will open from the back or open from the side, open from the top. Kind of, if you check out these hypercars, they're usually not easy to get in. It's really not easy to get into those cars. So I don't really worry about that usability case. So I'm really trying to be as minimalistic as possible, just using creasing on pretty much a cube-shaped capsule. And that gives some really interesting shapes, right? So I have only a few edge loops, but then I can play around and get interesting like back railing in, which I liked a lot and kept it to the end. You can see here I went to gray shade mode and started to really check how it looks in gray shade. To be honest, gray shade mode and lead mode, sometimes some stuff doesn't look that great with the reflections on. So I actually had to trust the workbench mode a bit more than like a gray shade mode. And I'm trying to add more edge looping so I can have a bit more control over the surface, so I can sculpt it a bit more. But I did relax a lot of these edge loops down the line just because they were too sharp when I activated the reflections. You can see here just a lot of creasing. Like increasing, decreasing, increasing. So this is another edge loop. I don't know, I don't have any wipers there. Could be that thing that they have the video screens, cameras inside. I don't really need the wipers. So, slightly futuristic vehicle. The driver is wearing a helmet. The helmet has all the visuals the driver might need. Extruding the back part. Adding a bit more meat to the back fender, essentially. You can see it's a lot of polygons here. They just kind of stop without any continuation. So I wanted to fix that. Didn't want to have n-gons, essentially. I only had an n-gon in the front bit, in the front fender, because it was just one particular area was really hard to do. And I was running out of time, really. So I left a little n-gon there. But here I'm just getting this edge loop and trying to use a G-stretch from the loop tools that will straighten the model, straighten the edge selection. Also just scaling down. Don't even need to use a G-stretch all the time. You can just scale it to make it straight. And I'm just checking reflections, and I can see that the panel is a bit bumpy, so I need to keep on straightening the different the lines to make it less bumpy. And that's one thing I like about, say, CAD software, that we can get like a super perfectly smooth software surface there, like that'll have exactly amount of bump that they need, like pretty much zero. I did play around with plasticity. I actually exported this model to plasticity and tried to do stuff. I kind of failed at the moment. I think plasticity is still a little bit raw at the moment. Needs a bit more time until it gets production ready, in my opinion. So I'll try it again next year. Here I have this shape in the back of the vehicle, and shape kind of looked good when there was a low poly shape. It was kind of ambiguous, but once I started to do subdivision modeling and try to kind of form it, it started to twist in the wrong way. So I was like, spend some time here, just because when I did the first pass of subdivision modeling, it actually like this one, I didn't like it. Looked like too too smooth, so it had a different feel than when I had it at low poly level. So it took me some time to figure out why. I just had to kind of triangulate it a little bit, and I'll do it later. So here's a bit of a jump. I'm trying to do these guides like a solid, like more like a triangle lines, but not really triangle. They're not forming triangles, but they go forming triangle shapes. And that was the shape language I really wanted to show. So you can see now it's a huge improvement versus previously we had rather plain, like smooth surface. All right, so here I have one of the backlights. The guys are protruding pretty far away. So I tried to cheat here a little bit just using creasing. This is where creasing started to break on me and not work that well. So I had the idea of having glass in front. It's possible. The problem is glass, it's not looking that great in Eevee rendering. And I felt a bit unnecessary, a bit of overkill for realistic render, so I decided to drop it. Here you can see my setup for the shader. You can just copy the setup. It's pretty easy. Just copy the nodes. It was also plugged into emissive, right? And now I'm doing the front fender. Deleted the grill I used to have there and played with different wheel placements. And now I've decided to be like an air intake. Well, not really intake. It could also be generated some downforce. So I can the air in, down, and sending it into the back diffuser later. I think here I'm using the bevel modifier actually at this stage. Just bevel, because I was kind of trying doing a redesign, so I didn't use the creasing. Just you need to have bevel for quicker design iterations. See, I'm just checking the design and checking how the shape look. I'll make it narrow in the middle, wider. One thing is a bit annoying. You kind of can see the car body see-through, which wouldn't really happen in real life. So in the end, I put a box with a black shader that would cut out the light, so you wouldn't be able to see inside the body. So here I'm copying an array of grills from the back, and I wanted to figure out if that could be a design element for this vehicle, and maybe having that in front. But it just made it look almost cartoony, having this kind of grill in front. So I went with, like, I played around with placements. You can see here I'm rotating it, increasing the array and seeing if I can make a denser, much denser grill. Which normally, on the vehicles you will have this type of a super dense grill pattern. So it's not a fairly common design element. But I've played and played and played, and just in the end figured out it wasn't really a good design choice. So I decided to go with really tiny grill in front to have some complexity, but not a major complexity that would all kind of overrule the design. Changing the array properties. And good thing here, you pretty much have a, every time I pick an object, you can see the stack that I'm using, the modified stack. And if you need to copy that, it's pretty easy. So it's all really transparent. And you can see also I changed the material from gray to black just because it's much easier to see. So moving the stuff around. A bit of a grill is poking out, so I created a boolean shape out of the Fender. I wanted to use that boolean shape as my like subtraction boolean. So I'm just setting this all up. So I'm using another boolean collection with that particular shape. And it's kind of overlapping boolean, so I decided to get a new collection and then reassign it. And there we go. Now we have a nice cut. And I just need to move it to a different collection. Just press hide for my boolean collections. And here I just play with colors because experimenting how does it look. It looks quite original. I'm trying to get this kind of layering of materials. So we have shiny materials, matte materials, some lines. And now I jump into some body modifications. So I spent a fair amount of time on trying to relax this edge loop, so to get a cleaner, like a smoother look, or using G-stretch, or using like edge slide, which is Shift plus V to move to edge, to slide the edge, and dealing with pole vertices, but still trying to keep it simple. So I decided not to do the body cuts. You can see here I'm using a relax to make that curve really nice. I decided not to do the body cuts for the elements like some doors or some hatches, because if I had to do that, I would have to increase the density of the model a lot. I'll have to pretty much subdivide it and then start to do extrusions for different body cuts. I decided that if I want to do a body cut, I will have UVs. I will draw the stuff I need to draw, and I will use the displacement map and increase the poly counts and division poly count if I need to do body cuts. And see here I'm trying to improve the front shape, the front headlight shape. That was one of the most challenging parts of the body because I have a complex shapes here, right? So I have some stuff that's super flat, stuff that's rounded, and shape in all the ways. And the stuff wasn't smoothed well, so it took me some time to shape it correctly. And I had to be extra cautious, so I didn't want to pull vertex out of place, because then if I pull it out of place, it would be really hard to place it back. create a bump, that would be a problem. So a good thing about it is that since the mesh is so simple, it's really easy to modify this without having too many bumps. And this is why I religiously try to keep it super simple. So I'm playing with Solidify because Solidify wasn't really looking good on this corner. And I figured out that I had to add more geometry to make it look good. So I did another edge loop. To sharpen it out. I don't think that corner was my favorite part of the whole vehicle. So I'm trying to sharpen the corners here, introducing new edge loops. Problem in Blender, if you remove an edge on this kind of free-floating polygon, it will remove the vertex. So I still don't know how to fix it actually. If you know how to do it, leave a comment, please. I don't know how to remove an edge on a flat polygon without removing the vertices. I have to use a bunch of hacks, but I mean, again, like in Maya, you can just remove an edge and the shape stays, but here you remove the edge and also removes the corner of the polygon. It's something that's kind of really hard to Google. So this front element, it wasn't actually coming from the original design. I spent like a couple hours redesigning the hood, the front, and I ended up really liking the shape because it's kind of repeating. It's gives a bit of rhythm to overall design. You have this triangle shape which repeats around the vehicle, and that looks pretty unusual and pretty cool. So I was like, okay, looks good for me, and I decided to keep it. You can see here I'm trying to try to move stuff around, but don't mirroring across correctly, so I have to tweak the mirroring options. Relaxing stuff. Here I wanted to straighten this bulge. So the bulge looked too curvy for the vehicle. I needed to have an angulated shape. That's what I'm doing here, making that shape straight. The back intake. I'm straightening this stuff out just to, again, the mesh is really simple, so it's really easy to deal with it. There you go, we have this kind of panel set up in the back. for the intake. Here I'm playing with the materials. So I'm assigning material to the rim. So I wanted to have a different material to the rim of the solidify edge. So you can see here, I just put it to a light. I just wanted to, I was really curious how it will look like, or just more like an experiment. And yeah, using a ton of materials, like again, it's really great for layering of the model, of the look, design layering. Like all modern vehicles have a ton of different materials combined together. So played around a little bit with the grill, but ended up pushing it back so it didn't poke too much. Kind of snapping the vertices to that line so it's a bit more straight. And go into this gray mode just to go inside the vertex, inside the body. And yes, most of the topology is just that, just moving stuff, tweaking it, trying to get it correct. Pretty time consuming. I wish AI could do that. And you can see here, I just push the shape away, check how it looks. It looked a bit weird. I was drooling over that metallic shape and all. No, it doesn't look good. I'll play around with the thickness here, just trying to get it right. And I want to position the light. So just I'm moving the bottom shape up. I'm trying to fix it a little bit. So you got to describe the corner. I don't want it to kind of penetrate the metallic shape because otherwise, if it penetrates the shape, it will look fake. I want to have a little gap, a little tiny gap between the plastic and metal. just spreading the stuff around, spending quite a bit of time trying to get it look nice. Doing some supporting edge loops again to describe the shape a bit better. Trying to straighten the bottom shape. So I was given some weird shading, so I really wanted to get a bit of like a skirt at the bottom. So I didn't want to have like pole vertices right on the edge. That doesn't subdivide well. There's a bit of a light at the bottom. It's just because I have like a light plane at the bottom, kind of by accident, but it looked cool. This is the guy I wanted to have just a black shader, just to hide the insides of the vehicle. Didn't want to show that I had nothing inside. Like, I would call them light blockers or shadow makers. Just trying to fix the grill so it's not penetrating the light blockers too much. And kind of tweaking the grill, the insides a little bit. I didn't like that. I wanted to make the mesh look tidy, so I straightened some parts. Here I wanted to assign a different material to that little kind of part, the little edge. And I'm strengthening the whole part and applying a different material underneath. Again, to create a bit of that layering effect. And just trying to snap the points better through mirroring. And I decided to create another array. I thought that this little kind of shape, triangle shape, could have been an intake for air intake or air con or whatever. So I wanted to make it more like a functional design element. Though I didn't actually make a hole there, but my black material kind of like serves as a hole. I just been too lazy to make the hole. You can see here, just placing it correctly using the constant offset, because I really don't like relative offset, which is what Blender does by default. And I also had an array just underneath the capsule, but I did remove it later. Just having too many grills is not a good idea. Now I'm doing a quick shape of the lights. Just so I did a little kind of indentation, like back extrusion, so the kind of LED lights have a bit more complexity. And again, I was thinking that I might add a glass in front. In the end, it didn't turn out necessary because I used that shader that looked pretty cool. But essentially I had to go over each light, which again was pretty tedious, but they were simple shapes. You just have to, they're kind of pretty much cube. You just throw a few containing edges and extrude it inwards. So I'm kind of manually pushing the edges around. Doing an extra extrusion there and there. And some edge loops. Just something to more or less hold it together. Especially since those elements are supposed to be black, you can't really see too much. I'm okay to have them, or maybe not perfectly shaped. Again, the same process, just modifying the cube to look good. I have to assign the black material to the outside edges, extrude it inwards, and just start drawing some edge loops around. All right, so we jump into the discs. And I mean, the thing is that that shape, the original shape, the low poly shape, is actually a twisted polygon. So I had to, make something kind of describing that model, but obviously not repeating it anywhere close in terms of structure. So I started with a little plane, and I'm just kind of snapping it to the disc. And I made the material slider because I couldn't see what was going on. And I made this green, so it's really easy to see. And now I'm just pressing Control, snapping to the points. Just need to get the basic model. And honestly, with discs, I made a fairly lazy job because I didn't want to try to make it all one piece. I knew it was going to be pretty black, and they were looking pretty good already. So I just wanted to make multiple parts that look good. So there's this piece, the middle piece, that little bit, and a couple other. They were good enough. doing some extrusions to get this shape a bit more thickness. And doing the rim, so I decided to kind of got a piece of the rim. So here I was a bit thinking about the design and how should I model it. I kind of ended up losing that bit anyway. Just made a big circle because it's too hard to. It's too much trouble to calculate the bits. How, because there are quite a few divisions, so I have to calculate how many rows in one, and then match it across like multiple parts, rotate it a few times. So it was too hard, and in the end I just removed it and used the big circle to create the back of the disc. And different polygons have different materials assigned to them, so that made my life also easier, that I didn't have to model every material separately, kind of. So I'm just looking at one piece, right? So I just need to model it and then Alt D to instance it multiple times. Trying to snap it, a bit hard to understand. So I made this a separate piece, but I think I ended up not using that piece as separate. I just assigned a material to an edge loop. So I'm still kind of working with this piece, trying to kind of snap it to the element. And that was a part of the original design, so I really wanted to keep it really thin shape. You see here I have angons, just trying to shape it in place, and then if I like it, then I can add edge loops. I'm trying to use the loop tools to space the edge loops across. And here you can see I just made a big circle for the background. And I'm just quickly connecting the edge loops and removing some of the modifiers I didn't actually need. And I'll try to use creasing as much as possible. And creasing here kind of breaks, doesn't look any good, so I decided to, I think let me see if I decided to add edge loops. Yeah, I decided to do edge loops because the creasing just wasn't doing the job. Now you can see it's way better look. That's the problem with creasing, it's not a panacea. So material kind of got melted, so I had to apply material to the more polygons to keep it straight. So it was pretty nice. This one. And adding more edge loops, strengthening the part. All right, so I finished the piece, so I'm just ready now to snap rotate. And I just decided to apply material to an edge loop instead of having a floating piece. And I remove that one. Alt-T, snap rotate. There we go, got this kind of origami disc design. And here we're jumping into Logo. So just first I wanted to play around with the font and make it thinner. I thought that my original letters were too thick. And I'm just trying to extend it to fit the proportions. And I think I had some solidify and modify on top of this, so it was actually a problem. And I actually like the proportions of the other font. So we lifted that middle bar, the M, a bit higher. And meaning is like Tenitsky motors, so TM together can make quite a beautiful composition. So I'm just trying to, what we get is pretty poor model. Like it's all triangulated and pretty bad. So I had to fix and remodel everything. All right, so I put it aside and decided to just go and combine it all together and make a nice quad mesh. So I tried to do it quickly using the Boolean operation, but yeah, not surprisingly, it didn't really work out. So here I'm just thinking how to tackle it better, keep it solidified, or just use it as one like plain polygon, which I ended up using just as one plain polygon really. See here, I'm just drawing some planes, doing some cuts to combine it, and then mirror it across. Essentially, I want to do one side well. You can see here I have the problem if I remove an edge, it removes the corner. That's how I was able to fix it. Just so I can see like right part looks kind of off, so I decided to remove the half, mirror it across. So introduce a few edge loops to hold the edges. And I decided to delete the right part again. Just do the mirror and across, and combine it again. And just do the extrusion. And run a couple edge loops across. I'm changing the auto merge distance because it was kind of destroying my edge loops because the logo is pretty tiny. Everything gets merged. And I'm applying different materials to the sides versus the front. And there we go. I've got my logo all nice and quad modeled with infinite quality. As much as you can zoom in, it will always stay high quality. And then I'm placing it at the front. And I'm playing with colors, but I decided to actually go with black. And I decided to play around as well with the proportions. I wanted to make it maybe a little bit more interesting. So here I'm duplicating the front wheel to the left, and I wanted to have different materials on the wheel. So, well, I'll try the red color, not that great. And just playing with colors, which so they were pretty cool, and just went for the kind of little accent for those beats on the disc. There we go. Got little good looking parts. I'm trying to fix the front top bit because that corner became a bit challenging. I kind of threw some geometry inwards, a bunch of triangles, so it became a bit annoying to deal with. I kind of hacked it all together. And I didn't want it to be a straight line, so I had to play with it. And this way I was getting really tired. I was modeling this thing, so I wanted to kind of finish it as soon as possible. But it was so messy, it was creating some surface glitching, so I wanted to make it nice and tidy in the end, at least as much as possible. And spreading the polygons. Still, the mesh is pretty manageable. It's not that dense. You can move stuff by hand around. So this was fairly happy with that. And some final tweaks on the back, fixing the back fender topology. This is where I used a bit of sculpting tools, and I used sculpting tools on the front as well. I unfortunately didn't record that, but here I'm just using the pressing shift and smoothing some stuff out. It's kind of unavoidable to do that. It's really quite subtle. I really didn't want to pick up the edge because I could smooth out the edge on the left, which I didn't want to do. And I'm just copying the wheels across. Some final tweaking, some different shapes. Copying it and just rotating it around. I just kind of placed them because they obviously rotated in the wrong spots. And I found that one of the lights I forgot to do, so it was final little tweaks. But it's really about it, really. So thank you all for watching. If you have questions, please ask me in the comment section. And I hope you to see in the next video.